as other communities. Unfortunately, policing Black communities are totally different than policing white communities. Even if you have the same police department, right? We know that certain areas, in the 5 boroughs are policed different than the most affluent areas or the Jewish areas or white areas. We get that, we understand that. But what happens in our own community, we don't do the right thing for ourselves, right? Politically, right? Or economically. So there's a lack of respect, right? There's a lack of respect. So you want cops to come from outside of your town, right? And they come inside of your town and they see you don't even respect yourselves. Like, the respect has to go both ways. Minister Hafiz Muhammad, God bless him, and he phrased this and he was right on time. Black lives must matter to Black people first before it matters to anybody else. How do you think the white man is going to respect you when you don't respect yourself? And I'm not giving no excuse for what they're doing, but we have to start respecting our goddamn selves. We don't do that, right? We don't do that. So they come in our community, they see we don't even take care of our community. So why should I even respect you and you don't even respect yourself? We don't respect ourselves. And we have to respect ourselves first. And if we don't respect ourselves, don't think no Jewish person, Italian person, or any other, a Chinese person, or any other person is going to respect us. Now, I posted what Captain Dennis said, and I got called, and I got called that I am a victim or I fall victim to white supremacy. When Captain Dennis just said, why are we continuing to allow people outside of our communities to give us poor services and poor products, right? Why do we keep going to them? And the thing is, we do, but we can't go into anybody else's community and give them poor products. We can't do that. We get ran out of there, right? We can't, you will never see a Black man that's in construction or in sanitation be a police commissioner in any white community. And there's no pushback from the community. So we lack the respect for ourselves. We lack the respect for ourselves, man. So until we start respecting ourselves, don't think these white cops is going to respect you, even if you pay taxes and pay their salaries, because we haven't stood up and respected ourselves. I mean, and then unfortunately we keep voting for the same fools and expecting a different result. A lot of Black people allowed de Blasio to pimp his Black son to become mayor, like he's connected with us, and put his Black wife out in front, right? And he don't even hire Black commissioners. And then they voted for him again, right? Look at White Plains. Crazy example. And we're going to talk about this Friday. So White Plains Police is on audio calling Kenneth Chamberlain Sr. the N-word before they kill him. And then Black people, and nothing happens to the cops, nothing, right? The mayor doesn't reach out to the family till after 6 months because he was pressured. But then Black people go back and vote Mayor Roach back in office. Where's the respect? Where's the respect?
There's a bit of I'll be real quick. There's a bit of like we know our audience, and at the same time, there's a personality profile. There's a profile, and like we fit the profile, and it's a historical profile. It's like, that's why the minister indicated, like, in this period, this pandemic period, get to know yourself all over again.
Exactly.
Get to know yourself all over again. Why? Because that dude from decades ago, he can't exist today. That dude he can't ride this wave today. Because that dude is quick on the draw. He's too angry. He's too savage. He thinks he understands when he don't. He's impatient. He's all of those things. Like, he strikes out with his fists instead of sitting back and understanding what's going on. It's like you said, with that kind of person profile, like, what did I tell you before? I think nationally, man, we just suck at this American politics game. we suck at it. We like, every 4 years or every 2 years, we like, well, here come the big day, about to do the same dumb things again. About to fall for the emotion, fall for the indirect arrows, shooting crooked arrows. You're gonna fall for the civil rights people up front. We want to rescue the soul of America, and we just stand on line once again, hitting the lever, and go back to the same stuff. But this time, because of this pandemic, nobody really knows what going back, quote unquote, is going to be.
Exactly.
What's that going to be? Other than the fact that they're like, look, we know people are dying, but look, make sure you take your ass to the voting booth in November. Make sure, yeah, people are dying. You all know friends who are dying, but make sure you hit that lever in November. Because even though you're dying, get the orange dude out of office and replace him with what? We suck at this.
Right.
Okay, listen, here I must interject. I think one of the real pitfalls with too much analysis coming out of the Black community today is a failure to want to make any kind of qualitative distinctions between the program and policies that are offered by the two parties. Although I'll be happy to admit that the Democrats in no way offer up a radical alternative, especially economically speaking, to the Republicans, we would be amiss to think, because that's the case, that there is no real distinction. One of the central tensions and the dynamics that have always driven American society, especially after the abolition of slavery, is the desire to exploit Black labor on the one hand, and on the other hand, especially by capitalists, the desire to use the power of the state to make that kind of force even more effective. And there have been varying degrees to which the two parties will seek to mobilize the forces of white supremacy to do this. Donald Trump represents a singular threat to African Americans that we have not seen, at least since the slavery period. He represents the ascent of right-wing populism that, should he win, will be transformed into a kind of fascism that makes the destruction of Black people his primary goal. Whatever kind of benign neglect the Democratic Party can be rightly accused of, that is not their program. And we can already begin to see it. The key issue that we face in the near future is whether or not the federal government is going to intervene to solve the economic crisis which is looming over the horizon. When we think about the role that the federal government is playing, which is essentially no role whatsoever to speak of, under the leadership of Donald Trump, it is adopting policies that are clearly, manifestly doing serious damage to Black people. The reopening of businesses. Well, let me step back. The very fact that we find ourselves in this crisis in the first place, both parties have to bear responsibility, but the right-wing drift that we've seen in the United States has been primarily motivated by the Republican Party, which has sought to mobilize the resentment of whites by attacking the welfare state and the social safety net under the argument that it is primarily, the primary beneficiary of it is undeserving Black people, is why our public health system is in shambles, why the federal government for successive administrations was informed through its experts that a pandemic was inevitable, and why it nevertheless failed to take the necessary precautionary measures and begin to stockpile PPE and other kind of medical health for precisely a moment like the kind that we find ourselves in. Moreover, so the lack of preparation has to, the Democratic Party bears responsibility. It's been an agent in the neoliberal rise, if you will, but the driving force for all of this has been the Republicans as they sought to make up ground for their loss in national elections since the late 1960s, since the rise of the close of the Black Power movement. Moreover, if we just look at the immediate response of President Trump, he has failed to take decisive measures that would insist that Black people be protected by providing additional resources to the hospitals that serve us, by insisting that life take priority over a return to normalcy, by failing to insist that meatpacking plants and other hotspots where Black people work in disproportionate numbers continue to remain closed until the owners of those plants are forced to institute safety measures that will allow some return to work whatsoever. What this is all about in the end is the Republican Party does not want to increase taxes on the American public and return to a progressive tax rate that would impose a higher tax on well-to-do individuals, rich people, rich individuals who make more than $1 million and rich corporations. That's what this is all about. And should, I saw a headline today, basically, I think in Huffington Post, basically we're now living through genocide through federal inaction. And the primary person who is responsible for these decisions and the party that he has his backing, almost to a person, is the Republican Party. You hear Democrats, I think Democrats offer a much, a clear alternative. And I think we would be not well advised at all. We would not be well advised to convince ourselves that there is no difference in this election. We are going to, basically we're going to sign our own death warrant here. I'll leave it at that. That's my initial response.
That has been Intellectual Conversations with Dr. Bob.
Listen, brothers, I'm sorry, man. You know what? An interesting book. Interesting book. Been discussed lately on WBI, a couple of shows where I first became aware of it. It's called The American Model. And it's a history of Nazism in Germany, and its fundamental thesis is that the Nazis borrow their entire code of racial restrictions and their program for the final solution of Jews from America, and mainly from the South, which really forms the backbone of the Republican Party's electoral coalition. And I very, very clearly, I do not subscribe to the view that there's no difference. It is no okie doke. We're pulling the wool over our own eyes if we insist on telling ourselves that there is no real choice to be made in the upcoming election.
I mean, I believe that there's a choice, right? We got a choice, but at the end of the day, Black people, every 4 years, every 2 years, and I don't, there's politicians that I love dearly, right? But the way this system is set up, we are always picking between the lesser of two evils, because right, because of the fact that the Democratic Party, when it comes to Black people, we haven't gotten anything, right? And sometimes, you get entertainers and celebrities that come out of their mouth and they say some things that make sense, but then they never have a follow-up for it, right? Yes, Black people, we gave Obama our vote. We got literally jacked from it for 8 years. The Black community got jacked for having a Black president. And I see Alan shaking his head, and but we have to, man. Like we don't even, the thing we was trying to do with the Westchester Black Political Conference was to enlighten people on what they should vote for, right? Black people are just voting, like, and I saw it from the beginning. They're gonna use Trump to always get Black people, to vote, right? To come out. Let's use Trump. Let's use Trump. At the end of the day, Trump don't give a fuck, right? He don't give a fuck if he's president. He don't give a fuck because he's not president, because he's fucking rich. He doesn't care, right? We all know he has used this to enrich himself in ways, and his
societal.
Huh?
It's societal.
Exactly.
It's societal. We knew this guy before he became president.
Absolutely.
This is not somebody that came out of Arkansas or Kansas. We
Absolutely.
knew who this guy was before he became president. He was the guy. I'm sorry to interrupt you. You go ahead.
Right,
I'm just saying. Go ahead.
No, and you're right there, because it was a scam from the beginning, right? And he used the 4 years as a complete scam. But here's the thing that kills me, right? And nobody is picking up on it, or really nobody's talking about it, is that Trump is one of them. He's the same dude that hangs out with the Clintons, hangs out with Bill Gates, he's the same dude. That's their man. The only reason Trump, right, they want him out because he has embarrassed white people. He has embarrassed white people to the point that, look, all of them, Bill Gates, everybody, every rich person, right? Every rich person had made millions of dollars off the 4 years of Trump. The comedian, he said it best, when he told us that he's not your president, he's my president, right? And Trump has fooled the world. It's a scam. We are in a scam. Go ahead, Alan.
You meant Dave. You said you meant Dave Chappelle.
Dave Chappelle, absolutely. Go ahead, Alan.
No, all I was saying is that look, I know who, I think everybody, I believe and know everybody on here is supremely intelligent, supremely guided as far as digging up past the surface. We're beyond the surface dwellers. When we hear terms like deep state, we know what deep state is. We know the role that we played in the culmination of this republic in which we live. But we also know that the man who sits in the seat, the power is always behind the man that sits in the seat.
That's right.
So the guy who sits in the seat is just the seat filler. We know that. 8 years of Obama, no drama Obama, he was for a reason and a season. Trump is the new guy that's for a reason and a season.
That's right.
And if we get wrapped up into like, I hate him so much that when he gives you a kernel of truth that comes out of his mouth, You like, I don't care what the hell he says. You may have missed him giving off a key because the man said, look, I don't want to go to war. He said that before he was president. He said, these are stupid wars. Who else have we heard say the same thing? We've heard intelligent people say these were stupid wars. Now, because he says it, we can't stand him. Oh man, what the hell is he talking about? He was there for a reason. They wanted Obama to be the one to deal with Asia. Obama didn't want to do that. He didn't want to deal with Asia. When he met with Trump in the limo, in the big Cadillac tank limo, he told him, you're going to have to deal with Little Kim. You're going to have to deal with Chairman Xi in China. They wanted me to do it. I didn't want to do it. The problem is we're so collectively speaking, of course, we're so on the surface of things that we're missing all this stuff that's happening right in our face. This pandemic was planned a decade ago.
Exactly. Exactly.
Ain't no bats. The woman said it. University of North Carolina, Fort Detrick in North Carolina, and the Wuhan lab. They say the Wuhan lab, but they don't want to say North Carolina because they want to keep you focused on China, but don't say, hey, one of those professors, one of those scientists came out of North Carolina. Oh no, where'd you hear that? That's all wrong. You're listening to the liars. The liars are telling you what you're saying is wrong, but they the liars. So it's like, once again, I don't mean to bust bubbles, but damn it, man, we're gonna have to bust some bubbles because we cannot keep riding the train of if and maybe and hope with more career politicians, people 30, 40, 50 years serving, and we still in the same position, except we grew up older. Now we got gray hair. Instead of having a high top fade, now we bald with gray with the same condition. But we smarter, but the man says, but can you solve these little niggas getting beat up by these cops? Nah, see, we gotta have the right officials in office. Right now, other than Eric Adams, and Hakeem Jeffries finally came out and said something today about it. But you don't hear the mad rush of political people saying, damn it, you're gonna take your hands off of these little niggas. You're gonna stop kicking their little asses. As long as I'm in here, you know what? We're gonna put a TV camera on here. You are gonna leave these little niggas alone. And we're gonna have people talk to them to make sure they stay their asses inside those apartments. Ain't nobody saying that. Except for us in the bow ties. That's it.
Wait, Alan. Here's the crazy thing. And Bob,
yes,
check this out. We have a Democratic run Senate and Assembly and a Democratic government, right? This should be the blueprint because see, people say that they want Congress and a Senate to be democratically run with a Democratic president. Well, hell, what is black folks getting in New York State and the Democrats run everything? What is black folks getting in Westchester County and the Democrats have a super majority in the county legislature and a Democratic county exec? Huh? We can't even get a black commissioner in a law enforcement department in Westchester County, and we have a super majority in the legislature and a Democratic county exec. So what makes you think if we can't get something locally, right, for black people, not just superficial bullshit, but something tangible politically for black people in a state that's run by Democrats? What the hell make you think we're gonna get something in Washington, D.C.? We are fooling ourselves if that's the case. I'll leave the floor open with that one.
Okay, so go on, Alan. You respond.
No, I just have a quick question. Ever since this pandemic, do you know what Governor Cuomo's approval rating is?
At a high? It's at an historical high. It's at an historical high?
Insanely high.
Right.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
So AJ, we can't hear you, man. I can see, occasionally I see your mouth move, but I don't hear you at all, AJ.
AJ, you keep muting yourself.
Yeah, we don't hear you.
Well, all right, it's unmute now, but then it's not, but then I can't hear you. Check your you're doing it from your computer? Then check.
Yo, you getting ready to make me do some sign language and shit. Do that again?
Check your we just heard you earlier. Check the output.
Yeah, somehow you deactivated it, AJ.
Yeah.
I mean, I will say this much, that one measure of the difference between the political orientation of, I'd say, the Trump administration and to be quite honest, okay, is that 81%?
81%.
Right. One measure of the difference between the Trump administration and, I would say, not just Democratic administrations, but even Republican administrations that preceded him, is to be found in the kind of divisive rhetoric that the president is using to continuously whip up the forces of white supremacy. There's no way that we can disconnect the number of white supremacists who are now marching on capitals, armed with military-style weapons, and the encouragement that they could continue to see from the president ever since Charlottesville, when he made the stunning move. I'm a real student of American politics. I have not heard American president use rhetoric that encourage such naked and legitimize such a naked show of military force, hostility, violence against persons of color. I'd have to go back to the Wilson administration. For the president to say that there are good people marching amongst the Charlottesville protests, the white Nazi supremacist Charlottesville protesters who took to the streets at night holding aloft torches saying Jews will not replace us, and those were decent people, that has only further encouraged it. And we see this happening now in Virginia, in Michigan, just to name two states where, I guess I'll call them liberal, gun laws allow people to openly parade around with military style weapons, which is a form of intimidation. We are a hair trigger away, everyone, from a much more open kind of armed conflict. Should one of those white supremacists shoot a black person, should they shoot a black person, black people are gonna be up in arms now. You better believe some black person is going, and I won't ask you why your hand is raised. Let me put my hands down. But
I gotta ask you a question as a
some black person is going to retaliate, and it is going to lead to a cycle of escalation where you could have low-level armed conflict, which would not, it is not in the interest of black people for that to occur. That's my view. I don't know if anyone else agrees, but I'll take your question and then I'll let y'all respond.
I just want to ask this question, and I apologize, but the question I want to ask is, as a student, you know that politics within the ripeness of our liberational renaissance in, let's say, the late 60s, where you had a demonstrative level of black testosterone as political figures.
Right.
You had Adam Clayton Powell and others. So I'm just wondering, from what you've studied, see, scientifically, I would say that white political structure in America has always, it's never squashed its ability to express itself. Whereas on our side, we actually pressed down what in one sense gave us that balance, which allowed us to achieve ourselves in some measures of political progression. We ended up squashing or pressing down an ability to present ourselves with a heavier level of testosterone as political figures. There's nobody that resembles Adam Clayton Powell today. There's nobody that resembled Ron Dellums today. There's nobody that resembles those key figures within, like Emmanuel Cleaver and the rest of them. Those guys are almost replicas. They're Jurassic Park. So in the process, I would theoretically say this, and I ask you this question: do you believe that some of what would quell or would balance off that white supremacist element is more of a kind of Black liberational political theology that is impressed upon a kind of mainstay, mainstream Black political presence that kind of allows itself to be pressed down? Like, don't speak too angry, don't be too upset. If you are, let the women do that, but don't be a Black man and political figure having some type of muscle. I asked that question.
Go ahead, Bob. Then I'll answer.
Can y'all hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now, AJ.
All right. Go ahead.
So I don't agree that they're at least not figures who represent, I'll just say it's a Black nationalist tradition that recognizes that there is a legitimate use of force, especially defensive violence. I don't think it would just be untenable to say that one really quite literally should turn the other cheek when someone smites you. We're gonna smite you back, right? Smack me and I'm gonna smack you back. So amongst the figures, I think, who best represent that, to be quite honest, and still I think is one of the foremost recognized national leaders is Minister Farrakhan, who I think has always personified a very kind of strenuous posture in defense of Black people, the need for autonomy, political independence, and also a willingness to buck many mainstream conventions, including especially, when it comes to the question of the use of violence, the use of force. I'll say the use of force. I don't want to say violence. AJ and I were having a discussion the other day, and we were revisiting recent history of Black political movements. And we talked about the role of Minister Khalid Muhammad, who also, when I was, during the 1990s, when I was a student activist, was one of the foremost local Black political leaders. Now, I will grant that perhaps they are not as in frequent numbers as one might like, but I don't accept the thesis that there are no Black leaders who continue to insist that we take a more muscular kind of stance and to fend off white violence. Even I say someone like is it MC Mike? Who is it? AJ, you know, from Atlanta, Georgia, I think. He's
Killer Mike.
Yeah, Killer Mike. I mean, Killer Mike.
But I'm talking about voting ones who are voted into office. That's what I'm speaking about.
Yeah, he's talking.
Oh, I don't listen.
Black politics.
I don't know if there are any such figures.
No, there's none.
It's doubtful.
There's none.
The higher up, look. The higher up. Look, this is a problem.
Look,
there are very few congressional districts where Black people carry a sufficient majority or have sufficient numbers where you're going to have a Black leader who's going to be a.
Hey Bob, name one just in Westchester County.
I would say that the only place there are none, but I would look.
Exactly.
That's why they keep trying to get Damon to run.
The only place where there is the numerical possibility for such a figure to even emerge will be in Black majority electoral districts, whether it be at the congressional level, whether it be at the state level, or whether it be at the local level. Now, I think that Mount Vernon is one of many municipalities where we actually should see a more authentic expression.
Name one.
No, I said where we should see. I'm not saying we do see it. We ought to, because there, I think there is a possibility, including an insistence.
But see, here's the problem. We will never see one.
Oh, I'm sorry. And someone said, I see in the comment, I forgot, Brother Charles Barron.
Oh, right. Charles Barron is the lone horse in New York. I mean, is the lone. Charles Barron is and his wife is the only one left, right? And he comes out of the struggle from the 60s and the 70s. When you're talking about these new politicians, right? You ain't gonna see that talk. You will never see a new politician, especially a Black one, talk the way Charles Barron talks, because they are controlled by by money that comes from the outside community. They can't speak freely because Black people still haven't understood the fact that we, as one of the brothers said, we have to buy our politicians, right? But you can't buy your politician if you don't have any type of economic development in Black businesses to actually put the money up, right? So there is the main problem. And then you have a party itself, which is called the Democratic Party. They don't want no strong Black man to speak freely in the Democratic Party, because if you do run, they'll try to put your Black ass in jail and have a fake ass investigation about
AJ, this sound familiar?
About a signature because they could never believe that a Black man was named Elmo Wesley, that lives in Mount Vernon and from White Plains. They'll have a 3-year investigation for you to make sure that you do not run for office. See, this is the bullshit that they do because they don't want no outspoken Black man or woman in office. You have to play the role to be a politician in the Democratic Party. And then at the end of the day, your people don't get anything.
And they used to bring up every time they thought you were going to run, they brought it up again because the investigation was never closed.
Exactly. Every time. Let me tell you, and you know what's funny? And this is what I did. 2 years later, after the election was over, I posted my campaign flyer on my Facebook page. Don't you know the district attorney investigators started calling people again?
I posted it too.
They started calling people again.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So this is the games that they're playing. And even we got a Black and dude, we look, Black people don't have a damn thing. And we got a Black person that heads the Democratic Party. Go figure. And has anybody thought about that? Right? We have to discuss police brutality. We have to discuss the lack of the rise in homicides in Black community, the same community that the Democratic chair lives in, right? And we got homicides, unsolved homicides in the same community that the Westchester County Democratic chair lives in. Think about that. Think about that. Let that sink in. Let that sink in. And then we want to act like we control politics. We don't control these politics. It's a fraud. It's a fraud because you're not getting nothing for it. But you run and give your vote. Listen, if we talk about the vote matters so much, then we need to respect the vote. And as I said before on the show, women that's listening, y'all respect the purse, right? You just don't give your your goodies to anybody, right? They just don't come up and sweet talk you, right? They got to court you. They got to take you out. They got to show you that they're worthy of your goodies. You should treat the vote the same way.
Absolutely.
You should treat your vote the same way. Remember, people died for this vote, but we just give it out freely. We just give it out freely, just like a hoe. Just give our vote to anybody. No. We should hold our vote. And if you ain't courting me, and if you ain't telling me what I need to hear, and then in your 4 years when I do give you the vote, if you ain't treating me right. See, us a lot of married men in many relationships know that if you ain't treating your girlfriend, your wife right, she do what? She stop things that you like. So if they not treating you right, then why 4 years later you still giving them the vote? See, that's foolish people. That's foolish talk.
Row A all the way.
No,
and
listen.
And every year we are foolish.
Look,
and we wonder why our communities look the way they do, because there's foolish people in them.
Serious strategizing requires that we start with real hard edge analysis of the structural conditions in which Black politics is taking place. And again, one of those, so there are a lot of factors that account. One is just for better or for worse, and I'd say for worse. We do live in a political system in which all of the levers of power reinforce the two-party system. It's been very difficult to break. The two-party system here in the United States, there has not been a viable third party in the United States since I think the election of about 1896 or so, when the Populist Party, if I'm not mistaken, made a serious run at the presidency. Since that time, you've had communist, socialist candidates, Eugene V. Deb during the 20s, independent political presidential runs, but we've got to find a way to break the power of the two-party system. What we should not do, and this is a big problem that we have, we want to wait till the presidential election to decide that we're not happy. And organizing to break the two-party system, at the very least, requires that the work begin on November 4th. And we don't do the work after November 4th. I mean, I'll just say this, because I've been having a lot of discussions with friends who, are sympathetic to socialism, which I am, and to the candidate who personified it, Bernie Sanders. We were all, at least me, AJ, and Damon, were all vocal supporters of Bernie Sanders.
Oh, absolutely.
In 2016.
Absolutely.
And I remember sitting in the studio and we were talking about the Sanders run in the New York State primary. We all expressed our support. But at the time, I had misgivings as to whether or not he was likely to succeed because his effort seemed so late in the making. I mean, the man just showed up. It seemed like you know what? I mean, maybe I need to step my game up, but I just woke up one morning and the primary election was a month away and he was well behind Hillary Clinton. I voted for him, seen him like he was going to win. I voted for him. But what I say that to say, even though Bernie Sanders ran again in 2020, we didn't hear a fucking peep out of any Sanders organizers, no representatives, despite the fact that Black Westchester has garnered a reputation for itself as a platform that is sympathetic to progressive causes. No one showed up. Like, what the fuck happened? It's a stronghold. Mount Vernon has to be known at this point as super sympathetic to progressive leaders because Jumaane Williams came, Cynthia Nixon came, they all been on the show. Alexandria Biaggi has been on the show. All of the leftists, I don't know has Charles Barron been on the show?
No.
No,
Okay.
Damon never reached out to him.
No, I did. I mean,
But my point would be,
I can't keep going back and forth.
my point would be that in some respects, this is just an example of the failure of progressive forces, no matter what label you might use, whether you're socialist, whether you're black nationalist, whether you're something in between, who fail to take themselves seriously and fail to put in the organizational work and then wait till fucking October to say, or June to say to ourselves, oh, the Democratic Party, they don't represent us. Oh, fuck it. We ain't voting for anyone. And it don't matter who the fuck, it don't matter who could be there. Yo, we'll say the same thing if fucking Hitler's grandson is running. Oh, it don't matter. He's the same as the fuck. That's bullshit. It's bullshit. And it's terrible that we're in such desperate straits that we want to lie to ourselves and tell ourselves that, yo, this is just like any other election. It's not. It's not. I'm getting my motherfucking passport ready. Get the fuck out of here.
You can't go anywhere. No,
I'm scared I might not be able to. I mean, I don't know if I want to fight the good fight or whether I might have to do like the European expatriates who got the fuck up out of Germany. It's yo, and it's serious. You want me to tell you what? And I'm serious. I've been having this conversation with everybody.
Bob gonna be sneaking across the Mexican border the other way.
Hey, y'all.
Listen, I might put on a motherfucking poncho and a sombrero.
Sneak your ass down to Mexico.
Exactly. Maybe
it's wallet in El Segundo.
We don't want you. Right. Oh, brother Geof is here.
So as Bob's saying, the only presidential campaign that reached out to us was Bloomberg just before he got knocked out the race.
Yeah,
actually did reach out to us, and
yo, he's about to get some money, man. I don't know what you're talking about, Alex.
Yeah.
I mean, let me say all the time, one of Damon's favorite politicians is Sister Neil. What's her last name?
Neil
Turner.
One of the national organizers.
You was about to say Neil Long.
Well, you know, that's not his favorite candidate. Your favorite candidate, AJ. That's your candidate. But this, I mean, you know, I'm an admirer as well. But ideologically, the forces of progressivism have an ally and a friend in Black Westchester, and I think it is very telling that for some reason, we're not making the connection between national level organizing and what's going on the ground. You know, and we got to do something different. And you want to say what? Let me stop there. For one, I know Brother Geof is here.
Yeah, I want to make a quick point, and then we gotta let Geof come in because I know
Geof, we can't see you that well, brother.
That's on purpose, man. He's doing that on purpose. but you know what? You know, it's hard. One of Bernie Sanders, the downfall that it makes it hard for Bernie Sanders is that his support was constantly from independents. So when you have states like New York, and when you start and you go to states that don't have open primaries, right? Sanders is going to lose, right? He's going to lose because his support comes from that independent base. The those that are in the independent party, and then those that are not registered in any party at all. You know, so you know, those that are registered Democrats who support Bernie Sanders, we get a false sense of security when we see those crowds thinking that it's Democrats. No, those are not Democrats. A lot of those people are not associated with any party. So when he comes to New York, he loses. Why? Because if you're not associated with one of the two parties, you can't vote in the primary.
Yeah,
you can't vote in the primary. So I mean, it's, yeah, as I keep saying, this political structure is a sham. This two-party structure is a sham. It's going to be a complete sham, because if you want to win, You have to be in one party or the other. Look at Westchester. The Republicans know if Democrats come out, they will never win, right? Especially with Trump in, right? So what they're doing, they're changing parties, becoming Democrats. So I could be a lifelong Republican, and then I could turn Democrat, and if it fits the Democratic Party's needs, they'll welcome them with open arms, right? But if it don't, fit their needs, and if they see a Democrat like Andre Wallace use a Republican line, they demand him, they do all type of crazy shit to him, and these are Democrats. So this is the bullshit in the two political party system that we have, whether it's local, whether it's county, or whether it's state, or whether it's on national, and they're not going to change it. Look what Cuomo and them are trying to do now. They're trying to say you need 50,000 votes on the governor's election. Whoever runs, whatever candidate, right, for whatever party needs 50,000 votes for that party to be seen as a state party. Every governor's election. These people, the Democrats, want to raise it to 150 to keep minor parties out of the state. Now, they no different than these damn Republicans suppressing the vote in the South.
No doubt, no doubt, no doubt.
Geof, the floor is on you, brother.
Can you brothers hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
hear you, brother Geof.
Okay, well, blessings to everybody, man. I haven't met Brother Glover, but peace to you, brother. I think everything that's been said, I could only just enthusiastically support, man. I actually think going back to one of the premises that you started with, Damon, was something that I think I would only put some color on, so to speak, in that this issue of whether or not we actually have a black vote or black power. It comes from the fact that you don't have consolidated. Well, okay, you spoke specifically to economics, right? Because it's the American way to buy a politician. That's established, right?
Right.
What for me though is problematic is though we don't have black economic consolidation, and that's understandable because capitalism used black bodies as capital, so that's why we're still capital essentially. But you would have economic consolidation if you had a cultural bond among black people. So that's the question that hasn't been answered in over 100 and something years. Even when Marcus Garvey was here 100 years ago, he used Christianity and capitalism to consolidate the black dollar. But you can't do that now because black people are openly questioning Christianity and capitalism out loud. Mm-hmm. So you're not going to have that again. So God bless Marcus Garvey and everyone who's come since him. But we've grown beyond that because African people are now not as brainwashed in that sense as we were 100 years ago. Unfortunately, that brainwashing has cost us our Africanness, which is really the only place we can go back to, not just geographically, right. Even though Rob wants to leave America. But because and as a footnote, I promise you, if you leave this country and you land in Africa, the first thing I saw in Africa when I went over there in Ghana, before we got off the plane, the first thing I saw looking out my plane window was an American Air Force C-117 Globemaster.
Okay.
You know what that is? It's a huge
transport ship.
It's absolutely one of the biggest transport aircraft. Exactly.
Fat Albert.
Right.
Okay,
Oh, that's the C-130. But yeah, the Globemaster is the big brother, the little brother. So the point is, they don't. And while we were at it, sleeping on Obama, he was busy putting special forces in just about every country in Africa. Mm-hmm. So wherever you go, you're gonna fight. You're gonna fight the American flag, whether you like it or not. The tragedy is that we're not prepared to fight even here where we are in America. So this question of culture is one of my own issues. And, you know, I praise brothers like you, Damon Glover, you, Damon, and Brother Glover. You know, you belong to an organization that uses culture to bond African people. And that's an important part of organizing that the Honorable Louis Farrakhan remembered.
Geof?
Okay. Oh,
he froze.
Okay.
Yeah.
Geof is gonna, I'm sure he'll come back.
Validated.
Okay, here you go.
Can you guys?
Yeah, we can hear you, Geof. You lost you when you were referring to the minister.
Froze. You froze up.
Okay. I try to decline a call and now I got to wait for it to disappear, but you can still hear me. So
yes.
In any case, I find that, and I'll wrap with this because I think your brother's on the right path. I think the question of the progressive solution for American politics would only work, though, if you had consolidated Black folk, because that's the only reason Bernie Sanders chickened out of this fight. Because the little bit of traction he got with Black folk was able to be pulled out from under him. Exactly. with the very weak Black consolidation under the Democrats, which you had people like the likes of Clyburn and some other Southern Democrats willing to sell us out, and maybe for good reason, because maybe they got something that's worth it in exchange. Who knows? We probably won't even know that for another decade. In the meantime, we get nothing for it now. And the question is now, will Black folk wake up? And we're not going to wake up just by voting, for this loser Biden or one of these bourgeois Negroes like Harris or Booker or one of them. We're just not gonna. It's America has always, and as ungrateful as America is, it's never been anywhere to what its constitution might want to be without African people. Because between Africans and Native people, this country has never seen the moral equivalent of justice, democracy, or moral righteousness. So they need to thank God for us while they're busy kicking our ass. So, while I'm hopeful, I'm really not optimistic. I'm really thinking that the better we become, the better this country may be. And while we're at this, in this condition, this country's gonna go to hell in a handbasket. Unfortunately, we're gonna go with it.
Go ahead, Alan.
It's in hell now.
Right. Absolutely.
This is hell.
I mean, me and Brother Geof have rehearsed this argument in the past, but and I know that Geof's position is that this is hell. I don't really think we really know what hell is yet. When we are marched off in concentration camps, not by the hundreds, yes, in concentration camps, not by the hundreds, like we now see on American borders and in our prison system, but by the hundreds of millions. And when we are not shot down in single fashion, but in large groups, I think we'll come to an appreciation that there is a lot worse things can get and are likely to get if we don't act in what I would say is our enlightened self-interest, which is Alan? To
because Alan's in there like, what?
which is to have an administration that is genial to the struggle. And I'll say this, and then I'll cede to Alan. It was Franklin Delano Roosevelt who, in 1940, when A. Philip Randolph, the Black socialist A. Philip Randolph, led a group of big six civil rights leaders, including the NAACP, CORE, and others, to the federal government and sat with Roosevelt and demanded that Roosevelt desegregate the defense industry so that Blacks could earn a wage equal to their white counterparts. As part of the Double V campaign, Roosevelt said, Randolph, that's great, now go and make me do it. the difference between liberal Democrats of any stripe and Donald Trump is Donald Trump isn't looking for us to, and doesn't invite us, will not tolerate any kind of mass movement that would seek to bring some modicum, no matter how limited, and it's going to be limited, any modicum of racial justice. Moreover, Donald Trump and the Republican Party will not tolerate a mass mobilization of Black people, which is precisely what we're going to need if we're going to have an effective fight back strategy. It seems to me like this is, I'm thinking of it now as a dystopian socialism, or, you know, which, like its utopian variant, just ignores the real factual situation on the ground and simply says, you know what, if we simply do like Samson and shake the pillars of the two-party system until the whole shit crumbles, maybe things will get better, not acknowledging that much of the debris is going to be falling on us. And I don't see how that's a viable strategy. I think we have to think short-term, mid-term, and long-term. Their short-term goal is to create the best climate, the best political climate, especially we're on the verge of a Great Depression, y'all. We're on the verge of a Great Depression.
Well, that's the best climate.
Yes, it is. You're right. It is the best climate.
And we
But you don't want to put in an American Hitler. You don't want to put in an American Hitler.
See, I think
Great Depression.
See,
And then
I'm going to tell you, I just want to just to add, and then I want to ask a question. Like you all, myself and Damon, like we grew up since Tasty Freeze. Okay, we've known each other since like both of us were like 4'1", and I just want to, so that you all know, like I live in Las Vegas now.
Okay.
I've been out here for probably about a decade, and I know, you know, Damon knows my mother. She's a very accomplished Black history professor, has, you know, assisted with Adelaide Sanford in the creation of many different educational platforms. And, you know, our diet outside of sports, can you hear me? I just want to make sure.
No, I couldn't hear AJ. I can hear you. I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I just wanted to give you just this quick backdrop. Like our diet other than sports was reading. We had to read a book literally a day. And the reason I say all of that is that in my professional career, you know, there's a lot of marketing, a lot of advertising, a lot of innovation, a lot of great, bright ideas, and yet at the same time, a whole lot of questions. And I know how to make people drink Coke. I know how to make people not drink Coke. I know how to make people fall in love with something. I know how people are made to hate something. And when you understand that, like I said, behind the guy in the seat is the real power, then I can honestly say with respect that I think that we've gotten a little too drunk on the personality profile that is Trump. And because before Trump, we hated Bush. And before we hated Bush, we hated Reagan. And before we hated Reagan, we hated Calvin Coolidge. I'm just using this as examples of the roller coaster ride that we've been existing in. And I would dare say that as somebody that was here when Hillary and Trump were running, as somebody that had a chance to sit with people like Harry Reid, who was one of the premier architects at that time of Obama's presidency, he said, I don't care what y'all gonna say, that guy Trump's gonna win. Now, that has nothing to do with what the guys on the street are thinking. That has nothing to do with how much you got of library knowledge. That man who was the head of the Supreme Court said, oh, that guy's gonna win. And one of the things that immediately came out, I was like, how do you know he's gonna win? He said, simple, we know the math. If he comes close to winning Virginia, he'll win North Carolina and South Carolina. It's a wrap. That had nothing to do with New York, because everybody already knows, regardless of whatever you think in New York, it's gonna be blue. We take it off the map early.
Exactly.
So in the process, you got to look at, okay, what are the rest of those 49, 50 other states think? Now, I asked this question to all of you. I had a chance to speak with a gentleman that Damon, you know, very familiar with, Rasul Muhammad, who is the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's son. And I asked him a question that I'm going to ask you all, because it's something that I struggle with. I struggle with the understanding of what exactly is hope, because I don't understand the concept of hope. Because sometimes the vehicle that speaks about hope, I wonder, what are we hoping for? Because I would make an argument to say that I think we're all hoping for too many different things. And I'm just asking the question because I'll be honest with you, I don't know the full answer. I ask you all, what is hope? What is the hope that we should be hoping for? And I don't know what it is. I'm asking.
Hope is the new
slang. I know what James Baldwin said, so don't give me the James Baldwin.
Well, hope is the new slang from what the slave preachers used to tell the slaves that heaven was, right? You know, I mean, you are in this condition and they want you to hope for something, you know, and then they don't give you the skills, right? They still, you know, look, they're still not giving Black people the skills, you know, and we're not looking to get skills ourselves to get out of this condition. So hope is like oxycodone, right? It just relieves you of the pain that you're going through, you know, and I think instead of preaching hope, you know, we need to preach self-help, you know, in dealing with this, because hope is not going to get us out of this, man. You know, it's going to be what we've been talking about. It's going to be unity. It's going to be economic development. It's going to be loving ourselves, right? It's not going to be hope, because we've been hoping since we came to these shores. We've been hoping for 400 and something years, and we're still in the same damn condition. So hope is just a new word, you know. I mean, Obama got that word going, right? Hope, right? That was that hope, right? But we've been hoping. We hoped through Obama, and we ain't got a goddamn thing, right? We still got killed by police, right? And we're still getting killed by police, and we're still doing the same thing. We're marching and hoping. We're marching and hoping, and it's not changing. It's not changing our conditions, because we're just still going in circles with new names, you know, and they're still not teaching us the science of politics and how politics rule our everyday life. It's not, and you know what? And some of them that are benefiting look like us. They look just like us, you know. So next person. That's my hope. That's my definition of that bullshit.
Geof, is your turn next. I want to be sure to go behind you.
He wants to go last. Well, I agree. I think well, okay, to answer the question of hope, I think it's a question of and it's really, to me, it's not that deeply philosophical. I think it's a matter of resistance, and where there's resistance, there's hope, because in every mind you, I'm no scholar, but I'm barely familiar enough with our history that I know that the only difference in any particular era, whether it was defined by economic or social or military conflict with this country, the only time that Black people did not help move the needle for this country's position globally or even domestically, and for our own position, is when we were not resisting. And I think that can be easily qualified as any time in the last 40 years. because every time previous to that, we were in some state of resistance. Even during our enslavement, millions of us were dying. We were certainly in a state of powerlessness, but there were still enough of us. And mind you, it'll take the scholars to really run down the dates, places, and amounts, the quantities of numbers in terms of our resistance, because sometimes our resistance were 2 or 3 ancestors on the plantation. Sometimes it was 1,000 of us or more at Harper's Ferry or something, right? But the quality of resistance is what defines our ability to hope. And when we get our hope back, you'll probably find that we're resisting at the same time. And I don't know what it'll cost us, but resistance is an act of love, and it's an act of hope. So, while I sympathize, I empathize with the nature of conflict. It brings suffering, it brings death. But you know what? We've been suffering and dying anyway. And the short term versus the long term, because I understand the intellectual and the rational position of Dr. Bob's position. I think I would only add to it that our short term needs to look more like our long term. And if we're going to struggle like this, we might as well struggle like we're going to die tomorrow.
Exactly. Dr. Bob?
So I think the essence of hope, understood politically, is a belief in the power of one's own collective agency. The precondition for any successful movement is the belief that somehow one will be effective. And hope embodies the notion that one can be effective. Actually, I mean, this has been the subject of very learned discourse and analysis. It happens to be the title of a book by one of the well-known Marxists, The Principle of Hope, a 3-volume book by Ernest Bloch. And basically what he does is offer a historical analysis where you see movements that seek to transform societies, find various expressions, often cultural, aesthetic expressions that speak to the hope of a people. This is why I think Brother Geof is absolutely right that there is a cultural dimension to this that requires that we be in touch with the symbols and the images that sort of embody hope and a belief in our own strength should somehow or the other transform and move ourselves beyond the present. If we do not believe we're capable of doing so, then I think the entire game is lost. So we must maintain faith that somehow the other things can change. I think what we also have to recognize is that, you know what?
And once again, I'm not, there's no game. There's no game. Is AJ, you there? Is AJ there?
Hey, what's going on? Facebook playing games already, trying to get me off again, man.
Because that ain't me feedback. That ain't my feedback.
No,
Alan. Alan's breaking up.
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay.
You said I was breaking up?
Yeah. It started playing what you were saying from when you first got on, man.
I was just gonna conclude by saying that one element of that hope has to be not just in our strength, but in a recognition that we need to go beyond. We need to put hope in alternative forms of, above all else, economic organization of society and also politics. So in that sense, I think a lot of the themes and goals that have been expressed here about the real structural transformation that needs to occur in American society, whether it be moving beyond the limitations of the two-party system, the various machinations that both parties use to suppress the vote, is one element that our hopes need to be directed towards. But also, we're not hoping because too many of us we just want to be like, we like the status quo, especially economically. Geof mentioned before, the black bourgeoisie, we're so fucking, I'm sorry. Here my frustration, it spills over because we insist that capitalism is always the way that it always was, the way that it always will be. Somehow the primacy that we give to markets and the pursuit of wealth is the highest value that we should pursue. And many in the Black community are as much attached to this vision as anyone else. You know, funny enough, I've had conversation with brothers who like to think that they are conscious and know something, and they insist to me that capitalism, you know, existed in Egypt and shit. What the fuck is going on? Like, capitalism is an historically created system. It has a life, a life cycle that will eventuate a death, especially if it's unable to speak to and address the needs of all its people. And we find ourselves again in a moment of crisis where we can. Brother Geof is absolutely right. This is the moment to fight like hell.
Are we living in the time of reparations, or are we too early for that?
I mean, I'm gonna let Brother Geof speak to that.
Nah, I'll let Damon start.
Hey, listen, man, I don't think it will never happen, you know, because we still are not ready to pass any meaningful legislation on reparations, you know, and it goes back to us controlling. Like, look, we don't even have to. Let's take Washington D.C. off the map, right? Let's act like there's no federal government right now, right? We can't pass referendums and legislation on a local, county, and state level that benefit Black people specifically, right? We can't get a Black city to pass a referendum saying that the descendants of African slaves deserve reparations. That's not happening. We can't get a Democratic run majority legislative body in the county to say that the descendants of slaves deserves reparation. We can't get a Democratic majority run Senate, Assembly, and Democratic governor of New York State to say that to put a referendum in on reparations. So if we can't get that, right, where we as Black people feel that we are in control, right, or we're under that illusion of inclusion in this Democratic Party, you know, to talk about reparations on a federal level, right, where the House and the Senate, you know, are mixed, and we have a Republican president, is crazy. We couldn't get reparations or what brother from the state of Michigan was pushing, to bill to study reparations, right? When we had a Black president and we can control the House and the Senate in the first 2 years of Obama's presidency. See, we forget the Democrats controlled the House and the Senate. They could have passed through anything they want. We couldn't even get that. And a matter of fact, as a Black president, we couldn't even get Marcus Garvey to be
exonerated.
Exonerated.
Right.
Come on, man. Like, you know, we always fall for the banana in the tailpipe when it comes to, you know, what Black folks should be getting when we give our vote. And that's it. Geof, I guess you're next.
Well, I think reparations is it's a timely introduction to African history. That's really what it's amounted to being in the American context, because obviously reparations is it's the introduction to a different conversation in different places around the African world. The Caribbean, Europe, the continent itself all have varying progressions of where that discussion lies. I think it's tragic that many of us have allowed ourselves to be pigeonholed in this country into the ADOS contradiction, which is not a contradiction, because African people are African people. None of us are descendants of slaves. That's our scholars have spoken to that. I think the jury's already back on that. No one is a descendant of a social structure. You're a descendant of a lineage. There's no lineage of slavery, all right? We were essentially prisoners of war, a war that has never ended, by the way. So whether or not reparations happen or not, I think it's a more rational question of where in this war we are. And typically reparations or anything like it has either been an act of surrender or an act of acquiescence when the power is in some way on its back foot against the formerly powerless. And we're not going to get reparations because white supremacy decides to do something nice for us. So when it comes to reparations, the question is, are we ready to even manage power? And we aren't, because we have no power here. Now, we do have power, but it's not power manifest, okay? A car with no fuel doesn't have power, no matter how big the engine is. So the question becomes, where are Black people and where are we prepared to go to create our power, to manifest it? And then you can demand reparations, because demand for reparations always has to be coupled with or what? Mr. Farrakhan said that himself.
Justice
You can't,
or else.
yeah, exactly. Or else. You got to have a or else. Not can I have something, please? Or can I have something because I deserve it? That's not how this country works. That's never been how imperialism has worked. And I think we got enough evidence by now. So reparations, it's a fine introduction to organizing. It's an introduction to dialogue and appropriate education, because there's still plenty of both those things necessary. But it's not a strategy. It's not a strategy for warfare, and we're still at war. That's really what it comes down to for me. I'm not trying to be hyperbolic about conflict. I don't know how many of us here are combat vets. I've never had a bullet shot at me. I've never shot anybody in anger, but I can tell you that we're still victims of war in the same way that every combat vet I know has spoken of it. We have all the trauma, we have all the dysfunction, we have all the short-term, the lack of vision, and in some cases, the lack of memory. So every benchmark of warfare suits the Black person today, and in some cases, white folk, but they don't get to actually suffer the way we do. So the question becomes, what are we prepared to do in this conflict, and how are we prepared to win collectively? Because obviously we're not going to win doing what we've been doing for the last 40 years. And we can't be scared to do what our ancestors did, because, Martin Luther King himself said, if you're not worth that, if you're not able or willing to die for something, it's not worth living.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, here I make light of my own personal history. I have been in the war zones on the streets of Mount Vernon, where many a life have been cut down by bullets. That's a reference to my own personal history. Probably more importantly, my first introduction to the reparations movement was when I was a junior member of the Black Radical Congress, and you had a number of leading figures, including Manning Marable, but also local activists like from the New York City area, Sam Anderson, Nellie Hester out of Harlem, and then also the late Muntu Matsamela. And one of the real lever points that they attempted to use in order to raise consciousness about the need for reparations, and also to go beyond the national playing field was the Conference Against Racism, I believe was the title, in Durban, South Africa in 2001. And I mention it because I think if we're serious about maximizing our power, one of the things that we have to do, and Brother Geof has been a proponent of this in some degree, although, is a kind of internationalism that insists that we use the global system as a way of raising important issues about equity and justice that the forces of white supremacy that dominate the American political system refuse to hear. And I say this because it's back to a point that I want to make about one of the differences between the Republican administration as led by Donald Trump, and all of the Republican Party is led by Donald Trump, and all of the important elements in that coalition. One of the things that they are hell-bent on doing is dismantling an international system that has been a limited point of leverage to press important issues of global equity and justice, including environmental justice. There was once a fairly vibrant, Brother Geof, I know will know this, the Jubilee movement that called for the suspension of repayments for international borrowing of developing nations. These were all items that were on the agenda in some respects. At least progressives used to talk to them about them. Black progressives especially used to talk about them. And one of the venues that they pushed them most vigorously on was the kind of international venue. And I say this, everyone, because I think part of one element of the design of the Republican Party, especially if Donald Trump is elected, is not only to dismantle some of the safeguards that were instituted here in the United States as a result of the decades-long struggle that took place in the early, the first half, essentially, the first 60 years of the 20th century. All of the alphabet agencies that were created above all else by Roosevelt's New Deal, but also international institutions that, no matter how flawed, did represent an advance. We need reform. We don't need, our reforms shouldn't, and they should be sweeping reforms, but those reforms should not simply do away with some of the advances. They need to build on the advances. We don't need to raise the foundation entirely, although I do know that Geof is ready to say, Rob, you're out of your mind, at least Geof. And maybe Damon and Al also will feel the same way, but that's my position.
I think that, and I just want to add that, when I hear the drumbeat of reparations, I immediately go into time. And I'm like, are we living in the time of reparations? I would dare say that I think we're living more in the time of repair. And when I say repair, meaning a kind of a self-repair, I hearken back to one of the ministers in the nation, a gentleman that used to run with Muhammad Ali named Abdul Rahman Muhammad. And he used to always say, whenever conversations like this, he would say, man, if the white man gave y'all niggas all this money, you couldn't turn the electricity on the next day. Now, I knew what he meant by that. But underneath his words were repair, and that's why I think during this pandemic, for us who've been kind of falling under the instruction to stay at home unless you have to go to work or unless you need to go get essential items, use this time to repair or to reflect, get to know yourself all over again. Take ownership of your defects. Take ownership of it, because we knew this, and I could say it on this element because I feel very open with my brothers. I think white folks have lost their ever-loving fucking minds right now. And I think that they are showing and exercising every manifestation of their DNA defect that we can see. They're lying, they're cheating, they're stealing, they're manipulating, they're corrupting, they're robbing again, not just again, but they want you to once again look at themselves as the problem solver. They want us to look at them as God himself. And the fact is that our eyes are so focused on their diet right now, their politics. We're focused on their economics. We're focused on their wanting to get back their lifestyle. Hey, niggas, I gave y'all some stimulus money. Will you go out there and spend that damn money? I'm waiting for y'all to go out and spend that money. I'm telling you all, open your doors and leave and go spend it. And the fact is that we're like talking about, as me and Damon always talk about, vitamin C, elderberry, turmeric, ginger. We're talking about things that white folks are like, hold up, wait a minute. You all are supposed to be taking our Pfizer pharmaceuticals. And we're sitting here like, nah, see, we understand that that's not going to help us today, and that's not going to help us tomorrow. Oh, hell no. Then look, these little niggas we see out here on the street, police, go ahead and bust them heads up. Because the other ones who are smart that are sitting in that house are sitting there drinking tea every night. Like they ain't drinking Sky Vodka and Grand Marnier and you know, getting busy. They're like, yo, wait a minute. They're actually diving within. That's why, as you said, I mean, we're looking at the evidence of the shooting, the murder of our young brother in Georgia. And we're looking at this. And as I posted on Twitter, I was in Atlanta when Forsyth whites were throwing rocks and sticks at Hosea Williams. And then all of a sudden, not just all of a sudden, but all of Black America descended on Forsyth. And I'm like, I need to see all you ATLians descend on Brunswick, Georgia. You've got to descend on that place, man. Because of the fact is that, as I said earlier, Geof, before you joined, that element of, I would call it the other side of the persona of who we are, we're very understanding, we're compassionate, but they've got to see our fight. And I'm not saying the fight in the sense of got to knock a head out, but you got to see us in our sense of like, we're not going to take this no more. And the fact is, I know it's a rejuvenated cry once again, but for some reason, we're just not getting this stuff right.
No. We're
not getting it right. And we're, as Minister Farrakhan once told us, Damon, you know this. He said, look, you're worse now than you've ever been because now you've got knowledge and you're no good with knowledge because you don't know what to do. Right. The man is shooting you and you don't know what to do. You wait to hear, well, what is the NAACP thing? Damn it, we know what they're gonna think. I don't know.
Listen, man, and you're absolutely right. You know, it's just when the sister from Peekskill and the cop was sexually abusing her, and she recorded him. Where was the outrage? You know, I mean, while our Black elected officials was partying, that was Valentine's Day weekend. They was up at the caucus in Albany, but on Monday, you know, you didn't hear anything. You didn't hear. I mean, the mayor put out a statement that, you know, he was supposed to do, but you know, where was everybody else, right? Where was the Black female organizations? You know, where was the male organizations? I did a video on it, but then I said, well, I'm gonna wait till one of y'all say something. Because why am I always saying something? And you didn't hear anything, and you still haven't heard anything put on social media or sent out from other organizations in support of this sister and making sure, like, we don't even know what happened. I was in contact with the victim's sister for a while, then we lost contact. So, I don't know if she's given up or what, but they at the DA's office wasn't even letting the sister see the sister, and had her in some hotel somewhere, right? And legally she couldn't do anything because the woman, she's a woman, she's a grown woman, so it's not much that she could do. But the fact that it wasn't any pushback, from Black people, from Black men in Westchester County is saddening. Because if this would have happened to any other female in any other community, there would have been some outrage. And and I'm not saying anything that's crazy, because we all know it's right. Even if people are watching this 6-7 months from now, we all know it's right. Look at the pushback when they arrested that guy that they found guilty of jogging, a rape, killing the jogger, in which we know he was mentally ill just by looking, and then they questioned if he was here. But here you have a police officer, and he was doing it while he was working. Dude, like, really? And there was no outrage. It was no outrage. So like we lost our we've lost our self-respect as a people, because as long as it doesn't affect the individual directly, we don't say anything in Westchester County and probably throughout the nation. But in Westchester County, we don't say a goddamn thing. And then we actually think that we are actually being respected, that they really respect us. But we really don't respect ourselves as Black people. We don't, because we don't speak up when we need to speak up on issues. We stay silent. We stay silent. And that's and we're doing our children a major disservice, because only thing our failure to act is making their lives as adults even harder. And we don't see that. We think that we're making it easier. No, you're making their lives harder, because they still have to fight the fight that we as Black adults refuse to fight and too scared to fight. Whoever else want to comment.
I think that's perfect, because I think that young people piece is exactly why, because, even if outrage, see, sometimes when you have power, you don't have to say anything. There just have to be consequences. And
Right.
And at the end of the day, even, being an African, I like to look to nature to best exemplify how we should behave, right?
Mm-hmm.
Lions don't grow up as a cub. They don't just throw them out the den, all right? Some birds, they just throw they young out the nest, but the point is they train their young. A cub don't learn how to hunt by himself. The lion or the mother teaches the cub how to hunt. And that's as much as we get on our young people. I wish we had a young person, someone under 30 in this conversation. That's not to say it's not a good conversation, but I think at some point we should reflect on what our young people are really feeling. And there are a few young people I keep in touch with, either on Facebook or otherwise. And there is a genuine malaise that is not just self-hate. It's not just frustration. It's it's the kind of feeling you get as a stepchild when you're in a household where some people get love and you don't. Because we have not shown our young people the actual essence of love, which is sacrifice.
That's right.
It's one thing to give them food, shelter. All right, fine. That's the capitalist notion of the whole hierarchy. I really feel like if you're in a war and you're not teaching your young to fight, you're teaching them how to fail. And that's what we're in. Our young people, by the time they're 5 or 6, as soon, Amos Wilson taught us that black children have the same or better cognitive, motor skill, and other functions than other babies until they learn the English language. And then they start to decline. They start learning negative words about blackness. They start seeing negative behavior toward them. Mm-hmm. Black children learn how to be inferior because that's what white supremacy does. It doesn't just inflate white people beyond humanity. It deflates African people into less than, into dehumanization. And if you're not teaching young people that there have to be consequences for the behavior against us on top of the outrage, because again, if something happened in our community, like you said, Damon, if that sister knew somehow that there was going to be some consequence to her abuse, and it just went out in the street that something happened and everybody knew something happened, you wouldn't need to see any demonstrations. There wouldn't have to be any more news stories. You would just know. And the cop would learn the quick way that what he did had consequences. It's the same thing in Crown Heights. You do something to one of the Hasidic young people there.
Exactly.
You get less than 12 hours. All right? Before there's consequences. And it may not be political.
Right.
But they have power, so they can make it political.
Right.
But it's an escalating, it's a graduating scale of what kind of consequences there'll be. And when you're at war, you can't afford to treat people less than they treat you. If they punch you in the face, you can't just push them back.
Right.
And that's, it doesn't surprise me that our young people, and I mean self-loving, intelligent young people, do not respect their elders. Because what do they teach? What are we really teaching them? We're teaching them how not to fight in the middle of a fight.
Right. And we're not building anything for them. I mean,
right.
How do you look, you give birth to a child, right? And the child grows up, he watches TV, he sees these communities which are clean, nice, right? You take him to a white community because that's where the mall is at, right? And he looks around and he sees the streets clean and he gets out and he doesn't smell piss in the parking lot and ain't no bums hanging out. But then he comes home, right? And he sees all this shit going on in his community. And then you wonder why he doesn't respect you because she looks at, that child is looking at how other people are living and then looking at their community and wondering what the hell is going on here. And they know they're a child, so clearly the adults are not doing what they're supposed to do. So, I mean, and you wonder why kids, once they get college age, they go to college and they never come home. And they end up living wherever the college is at, or they find another community that they can live in, But so, I mean, we have to take responsibility for a lot of this stuff on ourselves and how we're acting and how we're conducting ourselves and how we're disconnected, religiously and spiritually, and my mother used to say all the time. She was like, well, it's not the fact that God forsaken, Black people, it's the Black people's connection to God. And we gotta get on the ball. But like Alan says, we are still not using this time to reflect and to get our shit together. We're still not doing it. Look, the earth has rejuvenated itself since this global lockdown, right? The quality of air is better, right? There's no smog, right? It's cleaner. We're breathing better oxygen. But now we're breathing better oxygen into the same old Negro because we haven't changed, but the earth has changed. And we're connected to the earth, but we're not changing. So, I mean, it's a problem. It's a problem. Bob?
I was going to say that two things that do give me hope is that in this moment of national crisis, the almost nationwide call for sheltering in place has essentially de facto created a kind of general strike, whereby working people now have an unprecedented opportunity to flex their economic and political muscle, just as at a moment when we're beginning to enter into the first stages of what surely is going to be a national crisis. Notice one of the issues that was raised when State Senator, who was it, Damon, appeared on the show this past Sunday or the Sunday before last.
Mayor.
Shelley Mayer?
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry. Yeah, Shelley Mayer appeared on the show. One of the issues that she raised, almost unheard of for fucking 40 years, was a re-embrace, if only temporarily, of a progressive tax system that would place a higher burden on well-to-do individuals and rich corporations, which I think has to be part of the policy mix if we're going to bring about an improvement in our position. Just the crisis. I think another thing, because this speaks to the historical conditions that have actually allowed our people to make halting progress, but progress nevertheless, outside of outright revolution, but I just don't think we're right now. Another important condition, I think, that causes me to be more hopeful is the fact that today, the United States now finds itself in competition with leadership over the international community from another nation state, in this case, the nation state of China. Whatever we may think of the Chinese system, communist system, and I have a great many reservations. I do not hold it up as a model for something for us to adopt. The very fact.
Well, now, Rob, you don't know. You're not up on your Cantonese.
No, I'm not sure I'll find safe harbor there. But I mean, one reason that it does cause hope is because it means that the United States has competition once again for the direction of global leadership, and that may put a kind of pressure on it that has not existed since the collapse of the Berlin Wall in 1988. So that's a second reason for hope. And then a third reason for hope, because these are all the conjuncture of conditions that allowed the Black freedom movement to really make strides. A third reason for hope is the information revolution. Damon, there were plaudits given to Black Westchester over the past week for the role that it has played in a kind of community-based journalism, causing some to liken the efforts to that of the belated Nobel Prize winning journalist Ida B. Wells.
Yes.
Who was in the forefront of the Black news movement of the early 20th century. Her investigations of lynching was one of the things that brought to the attention of the international community the atrocities that have been committed by white folk and against African people here in the United States. And one thing that I am hopeful about is that we now have one of the tools of a nonviolent revolution, but a nonviolent revolution in communications and knowledge in our hands now. And so we have an unprecedented opportunity to, if we can manage at this moment to bring those three factors together in ways that we can exercise some leverage. I'm not saying a utopia is over the horizon, but we might take some steps forward, along with what we say. If we encourage people to fight, hopefully they'll be more willing to fight, even though we will debate about what that fight should entail.
Man, people ain't ready to fight, man. People ain't even people.
I think
people
that
ain't-
I think you're I definitely know you're right about that, because I mean we've been taught, punkology, but I think the element of what we are talking about is hearkened into that old time saying, if you had the faith of a mustard seed, you could move mountains. And every day we are watching people in the creation of Silicon Valley, in the creation of any additional industry that was not there. And I'm using this as an example. I said at the Brookings Institute out here that this is probably the last generation of thoroughbred racing. Like the people that feel like they got to run to Aqueduct and Kentucky Derby and Churchill Downs and Belmont, those folks are basically dying off. And there's a new 30-year-old that's emerging. And they didn't grow up with OTB and Yonkers Raceway. They didn't grow up with that. So in the process, they're about to introduce, you all probably know it, e-gaming. And e-gaming is about to pick up in Las Vegas. So inside the hotels, they're building arenas for e-gaming on the strip. So, and Black people have nothing to do with that. My point is, we watch and see them constantly shed skin and reintroduce themselves.
Exactly.
And the fact that what we do is we hearken back to, with all due respect, a period when we were slaves. And I hear Black people using language like our founding fathers. I'm like, what? Who? What do you mean our? They weren't thinking about you. And I hear this, and I've been in meetings with Cisco and Apple and Amazon. I've been in the headquarters, and I say that as an example because they've created a whole new language, and we want to keep trying to perfect their language.
Right.
And we don't offer something innovative for ourselves to say, like, okay, as Geof, what you were just saying about young people, I question, in the midst of this pandemic, how deeply rooted is the disappointment in young people today, because their ability to kind of exercise themselves outward has been completely compromised. They're at home. They can't do spring break and graduate. Like they're high on Obama doing a virtual high school commencement. That's like what? And the point is, we're I'll be honest with you, until we really deep down take an honest look from our ones, Minister Farrakhan, bless him, mid-'80s, all the way to the baby, and say to ourselves that, look, man, here's how we're going to reintroduce ourselves to us. Because I think, to a certain extent, politically speaking, I think we've given people too much of a break. I think that we've given them too much of a leash. I think they've been in office too damn long. I still think their peas porridge is not hot. They're trying to make sure that, hey, yesterday so-and-so got their money. Okay, now it's my turn. I need to get my money now.
Exactly.
So they're not thinking. As I told you, Damon, I'm like, they do politics for themselves and their other 14 and a half friends. And that's it. The community is the community, meaning you niggas can do whatever else you want. I'm looking after me and my 14 and a half friends. And I said, there's three things that we got under Obama. One, you got white folks speaking to you nicely. Two, you had the opportunity to go wherever you wanted to go. And three, you made sure your VIP invites were in the mail to the White House. Those were the three things that you got.
Some of
and
us.
Everything. I'm sorry?
Some of us.
Right, some, exactly. Well, we got a bird's eye view on the internet of what was happening in Michelle and Barack's day to day. So that held us. So what I call it, Grandma's plate. Grandma's plate has Elvis, Dr. King, Barack Obama, and White Jesus, and they're on the plate inside Grandma's apartment. So in the process, we've taken the symbolic sense and crumpled it up and put it in a vial and smoked that shit, and now just constantly get high off of the Obamas. We get high off of them. So now when Trump comes in, we're like, ew, bad taste, bad look, hate him walking, hate him talking, can't stand the man. But realistically, we haven't had love for the Republicans since what? I mean, brother, you know more than I, so I'm not gonna make wrong dates. But the fact is, I think we have said intergenerationally, we've given both parties the opportunity to show up for us. And yet we still are wondering, well, how come Michael Jordan didn't say nothing about the boy who got shot in Georgia? How come Dominique didn't say nothing? How come Michael Irvin didn't say nothing? How come Emmitt Smith didn't say nothing? How come Dion didn't say nothing? We're sitting back here like, man, we're waiting for celebrity reaction.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
We're sitting here waiting for it to be centered white news so that we can be justified and say, oh, okay, cool. Now it's time to be upset because see, they're upset. Now, I'm not disrespecting any of us.
Right.
But our calling card has still to this day, and it was targeted and it was strategic. Damon, you hit me to this. This stuff didn't just haphazardly happen. It was targeted this way. It was targeted this way because they're always wanting to make sure and see where our cause and effect was. Remember what I said, Bakari Sellers and them, when they were SGA presidents, the Jews went in there and they made sure that each one of those young Black kids who were SGA presidents on those campuses were invited to the AIPAC meeting up in DC. And they went very early. So those Jews scouted who are the next Black young political leaders are gonna be. And they went to DC, all expense paid to that meeting in AIPAC. And to this day right now, they all signed that pact. So whenever you hear 30-plus-year-olds talking heavy American politics, scratch the side of your face for a second and just ponder the fact, like, did you sign? Hey man, pull out that list. Did they sign their name to that pact with AIPAC?
Exactly.
Because who you think is riding for you is actually riding for them.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
So, I mean, I'm just saying that I agree with you, Geof. I agree with you, Damon. I agree with you, Dr. Bob. I think at a certain point, strategically, why don't we hold our vote? Why doesn't that press release go out the saying Black America is holding its vote? And let them ponder, what? Let's invite one of them on. We got to talk about this. Okay, we're holding our vote. We're not, it doesn't mean that we're gonna vote, doesn't mean we're not gonna vote. We're just holding our vote. All the Congress people, Ilhan Omar, Notorious, AOC, and the rest, everybody pull back. Everybody fall back. The album is not selling right now. Everybody fall back. Let's fall back a second, and then let's reconvene and figure out what our political and economic strategy is going to be. But we can't do it if half you all are still riding on make sure the van is ready because we got to go vote. No, we're going to hold our vote back for a second.
You know, what are people voting for? Like if you walk in and you just see a name, right? Row A3, and there's an A there, right? There's a name. You never read a palm card, you never saw a video, you never anything, and then you're gonna put your vote there. That's foolish.
Hold on a second, Damon. I told you I'm ignorant. I don't understand how you vote for judges. I still don't understand.
Alan, you broke up again.
He froze.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah. Uh-oh.
How do you tell who's a good judge and a bad judge?
You can't, man. You know, I supported some judges because I sat down with them and talked to them. You know, I mean, but judges is real, you know, voting for a judge is real tricky because they're not allowed to talk about social issues, right? So how are you going to vote for a judge, and publicly they can't talk about vote because you don't know which way this person is going to vote. Now we know, right? Just because the law states something doesn't mean that the judge is going to rule based on the law. The judge rules based on their interpretation of the law. So what is their basis of the interpretation? Because if they're racist, they can interpretate that law through racist islands, you know, and that's the crazy thing about it, you know. But we don't we just give our vote, man. I mean, stop it. You know, if I don't know you, I'm not voting. If I look at something and I haven't met you, I haven't shook your hand or even seen you on a debate, I'm not voting for you. I don't care, Republican, Democrat, Independent, or whatever. I'm not going to vote for you because my vote is just that special to me that I'm just not giving it up to anybody. You know, I'm not going to vote for you. So it is what it is. You know, and I think, you know, if more people do that, we will force politicians' hands to really show who they are, or at least have a conversation. And even the party, oh, vote A all the way. Well, I don't know these people. We'll just vote for them because they're a Democrat. Are you kidding me? I'm not doing that.
Let me say that
We'll do that.
today is
Politicians' hands to really.
Today is the first time in probably 50, 60 years where we've seen one of the major parties begin to seriously consider one of the mainstays, some of the mainstays of a kind of progressive socialist policies. For example, you hear Democrats now up to the very Speaker of the House herself, Nancy Pelosi, at least acknowledging that consideration has to be given during this pandemic to a universal basic income. Period. $2,000 a month, at least for the duration, to every American of a certain means, at least for the duration of this crisis. And we're talking about at least 18 months. That's my estimate, how long the Democratic Party would be willing to take what would be by the standards of America, and I gather by many Western nations, a real progressive leap forward, if only temporary. And I think we have to be honest about the fact that the Republican Party under the leadership of Donald Trump totally repudiates such a policy. Instead, what they want to do is essentially declare the crisis over, despite the fact that we're likely to see, all projections are, that we will see an increase in deaths and the spread of infections because of a return to business as normal. As a matter of fact, I mean, a lot of people have said, and I think it's beginning to resonate, especially in some of the more progressive sectors of the party, because the party isn't one monolithic entity. Instead, it's comprised of different factions and elements that represent different groups with different interests. And the Democratic Party now does have a vigorous, limited influence, AOC, and the like, along with, Bernie and maybe a few others at more local level, at least, has a faction that is arguing for progressive policies. And then because of this crisis that we found ourselves in, it's getting a reception that it would never have done before. But Republicans is not even going to consider that shit. And you want me to tell what? That is a big difference. It's a big difference.
Yeah, can y'all see that shit?
What
That's
is
what
that?
we got to do.
What's it say?
Nobody pays shit. I mean,
Nobody pay shit. See, nobody pay shit. See, this is.
I want to second what Damon's saying.
What the American people need to do, just don't pay shit. Don't pay nothing. Don't pay your mortgage. Don't pay
no fuck. Listen.
Don't pay a motherfucking thing. They're not gonna foreclose on you. Imagine these banks have 90 million homes they're gonna foreclose on. No, you just don't pay nothing.
The economic crisis means that half the people don't have the option but not to pay.
Right.
And so it requires a resolution. But on top of that, there are things that we can refuse to do. We should be talking about, yo, fuck paying the federal government taxes. Yo, motherfuckers don't want to pony up any money. Fuck you. I'll send my fucking tax. I will write zero. I have 10 deductions. I got 20 deductions. Don't pay no motherfucking tax, and I'll send it to the state governments.
Now, let me tell you something.
That's real leverage. And this is a time when we have leverage. So I wanted to second you there, brother.
Yeah, well, I mean, but see, it has to be done as a unit. You know, people look. Governor Cuomo said something that every American would say, right? When he got in the argument with Mitch McConnell, and Mitch McConnell, they're not bailing out, and Trump said, "Well, give us our money back," right? So now, I mean, Cuomo said to Mitch McConnell, "Well, we pay more taxes than your state. We one of the highest people that put in the kitty. Give us our money back then." So that attitude should be for the American people. Give us our goddamn money back. Right? Because this is not a loan. This is our money. This is our goddamn money that we give faithfully. You're acting like you're gonna give me my money and then I gotta repay you my goddamn money. Like, is really that damn gangster like that? And the American people are just that stupid. We gave the banks all this money when that money could have just went to every American person. $5,000 a month, right? $5,000 a month. Everybody should have got $5,000 a month. And then we would have got through this, because what's going to happen is you're giving these companies this money to try to keep their employees off the payroll. But once this is over, they're firing half of their employees. You know, I talked to a friend of mine today. He's like, "Yo, dude, I've been working from home, but I don't even know if I'm going to have a job after this is over," because they're talking about cutting back. So the American people lose again. They lose again. Mm-hmm. Dude, man, this system is so twisted, man, and it's not surviving. We're not, and those of us are not seeing that this system is totally broken, and foolish ones are still arguing, let's hold the system up. Let's continue to hold this broken system up, and maybe do right for the masses of the people. It's not going to do right for the masses of the people, because these companies are going to get this money and they're still going to lay off people, and we're still going to have high unemployment. And it's, you know, I mean, we got to get it together, man. I mean, we have to get it together. Man, it's almost 1 o'clock, man. It's 12:30.
We love the politic, D.
Man, I thought we was working on the album, man. So we writing these rhymes.
D, you asked me if I wanted to get on and talk some shit. So, you know, obviously, yes.
I'm gonna call it, man. Yeah, I want to thank y'all guys, man, for coming on so I could test this system out, man. It's very good, man. And you know, because Friday we're gonna have some heavy hitters on, and we want to see what they say about how do we address police brutality in the Black community.
What time, Damon?
It's 11 a.m. It's 11 a.m. We're gonna be on for maybe an hour and a half, depends on how the flow go. And
this is Friday, not Saturday. Friday.
Yeah, this is Friday.
Okay.
This gonna be called Freedom Friday, where we talk about being free. Finally, you know.
How about Fractured Friday? Damn.
Right.
Yeah.
But
all good. I'll be there. I'll be on.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, man. And I gotta see. I hope this thing saves. I don't even know yet. This is my first time using Zoom. So AJ texted me and he said, tell everybody, he said, peace. But those who want to continue to watch it, hopefully I could get this to download, and I'll post it on Black Westchester, man. But thank y'all, brothers, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you, fellas.
Peace. Thank
Absolutely,
you.
brother.
Pleasure meeting everybody.
Brother Allen.
Yes, sir.
We'll build.
Yes.
It was good. It was good. You know,
Pleasure greeting everybody.
Yep.
All right,
Peace.
man.
Okay.